it's Reagan and welcome to my June wrap up. Now for the month of June, I was able to complete a total of 5 books and get through partially a 6th book, which overall I would say I'm really happy with. For the month of June, I felt like I was battling a reading slump the entire time, which if you're hearing the amount I read, you're probably like, well, that doesn't make sense. She read 5 books. It was very strategically done. I just never knew this month what I felt like reading, and by consequence I felt like if I picked up the wrong book it would be game over. Luckily though, I ultimately picked up a lot of super entertaining, really easy to read or very amazing novels this month. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into what I read. The first book I'm going to talk about is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This is a contemporary fiction novel, which I'm so happy I picked up this month. It's been so long since I've read contemporary adult fiction. Celeste Ng is an author I absolutely loved. I read another novel of hers, Everything I Never Told You, when that first came out. Loved it so much. So this is a novel that I knew I wanted to pick up right away. This is also being adapted by Reese Witherspoon for a Hulu original series, so definitely wanted to read it before the show came out later this year. But this is a novel that's definitely a family-centered story. This is set in a town called Shaker Heights in Ohio, and this is a place where there are kind of a lot of unsaid rules. Everything is very orderly, the streets are really pristine, the houses are very beautiful, people have nice white picket fence lives. We follow one of our main characters, Elena Richardson, and she is really the embodiment of this type of community. She has a beautiful home, she has a beautiful family, she's a writer at the local newspaper, and she's just kind of living her life. And then enter a new character, Mia Warren. She is this eccentric artist, and Elena rents out their second property to Mia and her daughter. You basically follow this novel as these two families kind of begin to intertwine and interact in really interesting ways. The book actually opens at the end of the year, and the house, Elena's house, is on fire and is currently burning to the ground. And there you kind of rewind to try to figure out how and why this giant fire has occurred. It's essentially a story of multiple different vignettes following a variety of characters within this family, and you kind of see sparks of how different interactions could cause multitudes of different fires that could ultimately cause the family home to burn down, or one can kind of spiral out of control. Celeste Ng has a way with writing family dramas. You basically really get to see a lot of different points of views. All the characters are really great. No one is inherently bad, but that doesn't mean they're perfect either. Everyone's making decisions, good or bad, and they're gonna have to deal with the consequences of them. I loved this book so much. It was riveting, it was an absolute page turner, and it was just so unique, and it just reminded me why I love contemporary family drama and why I need to read more of it. But ultimately I did give this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. I also loved the early 90s setting. I don't know, it just felt so atmospheric, which you might say it's set in a suburb in the 90s, but I don't know, I just felt very transported there. Like, I could just feel it, if that makes sense. But this was great. So happy I picked it up this month. From there, I really wanted to read something angsty, so I took a quick trip to the bookstore and I ended up picking up A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmer. This is a YA fantasy retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and initially when I heard that and read that kind of blurb, I was put off. I was like, that story is kind of done quite a bit. This might be a little too cliche, it might be a little too overdone. But ultimately I thought this book was a really fresh take on this retelling and found it super entertaining, very angsty, but really funny and entertaining as well. In this story, we follow our main character Harper, who does have cerebral palsy, and she lives in our world. She lives in DC, but she's struggling with her brother kind of every day to survive. Their mother's super sick, and their father has fled the scene, and their father, before he left, basically owes a bunch of money to some bad people, which is why he left. So Harper and her brother are trying to make money to pay these people back while also trying to help their mother get the medicine and the help she needs. At the beginning of the story, Harper is kind of transported to another parallel fantastical world where she meets Prince Ren, who, as you can guess, is cursed because he is the beast within this story. And basically there, they kind of live in this fantasy world. Harper kind of is struggling with her world and his world, and again, it sounds super cheesy, and don't get me wrong, it definitely plays on these tropes in an interesting way, but it's just so entertaining and well done. It was exactly what I wanted it to be. It also has quite a bit of humor in it. I feel like the author does a really great job of referencing the modern world in this fantastical setting and like never not recognizing that it is kind of ridiculous, and I think that's what makes it so playful and fun. But this has some great romance, some great plot angst. I love the main character Harper. She's so spunky and interesting, and I just think it was a great time overall. I flew through this book. It's exactly what I wanted. YA angsty fantasy classic fun, if you will, but I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was very entertaining and I can't wait for the next book in the series. From there, I picked up Rich People Problems by Kevin Kwan. This is the third and final book to the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy, and I have had such a fun time reading each and every one of these books. They're just so dang entertaining. I feel like I've also been talking about these books a lot, but basically this is a story centered around sort of 2 main characters, but it is multi-perspective and you really follow a huge cast and their wild lives. But the first one really centers around Nick and Rachel. They meet in New York City. They're both professors at a really great college. They have been dating for some time, and Nick invites Rachel back to his family home in Singapore to kind of meet his family. Rachel arrives there and basically discovers that he is crazy rich and kind of puts her at the center of all these wild family politics and drama, and also like extravagant situations that are beyond even my wildest dreams before I read this book. I found this first novel to be even more outrageous and ridiculous than the first 2, which is definitely a good thing. There's something about these books that are just so dramatic. It almost feels like you're reading a bit of a soap opera, but like in a good way. I also feel like the author weaves in some really great historical things as well, particularly in this novel. It references the Japanese occupation of Singapore and kind of had some characters interact within that particular moment in time, which I thought was very cool. But overall, this novel was hilarious, interesting, just absolutely wild. I mean, the things people can do when they have billions of dollars just never ceases to amaze me. It probably, like, I should probably stop being surprised after a while, but I just never do. I'm always like, wow, I can't believe this is happening right now. I honestly think this series is a perfect summer read. It's so much fun and you'll zip through each one. Perfect thing to bring on a trip or a holiday, if you will. But yeah, really loved my time with this series. Sad it's over, but hopefully I'll find something also really fun to kind of fill my time with next time. But yeah, I ended up really liking this and giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next book I completed was Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I honestly feel like I have been reading this book for forever, and in full transparency, while I did like this book, I didn't really love it, and it might be my least favorite Brandon Sanderson of the ones I've read. That being said, it still was very good, but given that Brandon Sanderson's other books have all been like life-changing and mind-boggling, this is not like it's my least favorite of those, but like still solid book, if you know what I mean. This book is centered around this once great city, Elantris. Essentially, prior to its fall, people would essentially wake up with a blessing and they would be transformed to this very much godlike figure. Not only were they revered by the general public, but they also had immense amount of power. However, something has happened that turned that blessing into a curse. All the old residents of Elantris have died, the city is now in ruins, and now when individuals wake up with this blessing, they are sent and locked away to this now decrepit city of Elantris, where everything is like grimy and gross. That's kind of like the center of the story. We follow multiple perspectives kind of in and around the city surrounding the once great city of Elantris, but we also follow a main character who wakes up with this curse and is sent to Elantris. One thing that I'll say is really interesting and haunted my dreams when it comes to the story is when you are cursed and sent to Elantris, your body is kind of in limbo. You can't heal. So if you like stub your toe, you're left with that feeling of a stubbed toe for all of time. And the idea is if like a bunch of minor injuries accumulate and kind of drive you slowly insane. So there's that element that's absolutely terrifying. But again, you really do follow multiple perspective, a foreign princess who comes to marry a prince. You also follow a religious ambassador who's trying to like reform the whole city or destroy it. It's really, really interesting. Again, there's a lot of really great pieces of this book, but I did find that the middle dragged a bit and I had a hard time kind of getting through it. The beginning and the end were super strong, but again, the middle was a little bit slow. I can tell this is Brandon Sanderson's first novel. I mean, it had all the pieces of a Brandon Sanderson genius idea, but the execution wasn't to par to his other stories, but I did ultimately really like it, and I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Characters were really likable, there was great banter, and of course a really great and interesting plot with some great twists. But again, my least favorite one, but I would still recommend it if you're interested in the story because it's worth reading for sure. And the last book I completed this month was Storm and Fury by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I was back on my angsty train and I wanted to read something that would be highly entertaining and a quick read. Before I picked this up, I did not realize that this is actually the first book to a spin-off series of a series that was very popular called White Hot Kiss. That being said, I did not read those books before reading this, and I would say I would probably recommend reading those first, but you definitely don't have to because you can kind of figure it out, and she definitely does give you context to what's going on in the plot. I'll probably say I've been spoiled for a lot of stuff that happened in White Hot Kiss, but I'm personally okay with that. But if you're interested in both series, read the first one before this one. That being said, I did find this book to be really entertaining, which was exactly what I wanted it to be. This is set in a world where demons exist, and there are people who obviously fight these demons to protect humankind. These people are powerful beings called gargoyles, and they basically like turn into these stone people and they fight. Follow our main character Trinity, who is basically raised in one of these gargoyle compounds. However, she is not one herself. She is harboring though a secret that kind of makes her very desired within this like demon world, but I'll leave that for a surprise if you do pick up this book. But the reason why I wanted to pick this up because I wanted something a little steamy, a little romantic with a really fast-paced plot, which is exactly what was delivered. There's a really kind of like angsty romance at the center of this, but I'll say that there's some really well-written combat as well. Trinity as a main character is so likable. She's really strong and independent, always willing to speak her mind, and she's also like really kick butt. And also kind of referencing back to the combat, there is a lot of fighting scenes throughout this, and I do feel like Jennifer L. Armentrout wrote those really well. Like I could very much visualize what was going on, like the moves and the like environments and the different demons and things like that. So I really did enjoy that. All in all, this is exactly what I wanted it to be, a kind of romance heavy YA paranormal fantasy hybrid novel, and I do think I actually might try to pick up White Hot Kiss, which does have such a ridiculous name, but I did like this book, so I feel like I have to give that series a try. I can't wait for the second book in this series to come out. I'll definitely pick it up, and I ended up giving this book a 3.75 4 stars. Super entertaining, would definitely recommend. The very last book I'm still in the midst of reading, but I definitely wanted to talk about, and that is City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. I read Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett last year and absolutely loved it, so I wanted to check out his completed series. And so far, this book has not disappointed. Similar to the other book I read from him though, his plots are so intricate and have so many different layers. It's so hard to describe in like a succinct way. I feel like there's just so many different variables. I am about 150 pages of the way through this first one. It is currently my commute book, but I can already tell I'm gonna love it because it's just so interesting and unique, and I'm just obsessed with the characters and the POV and the mystery that's centered in this story. But to do my best to describe what this book is about, it's basically about like two lands that have been at the center of a power struggle and like conflict and ownership for a very long time. One of these pieces of land is called the continent, and they were once great and very powerful and the conquerors because they were able to harness the power of gods. However, the other piece of land were the conquerees killed the gods and now are the conquerors, and this land is called Sapur. Fast forward to present day, we follow one of our main characters, Shara, who is a very accomplished spy and is back on the continent trying to like uncover this mystery and this power struggle that's happening over there. It's super fascinating. There's so many layers of history and just mystery. I honestly still am trying to piece together what in the world is going on, but I'm obsessed so far. I love the main character Shara. She's so capable and like unassuming, so she's kind of like snakes through social situations, and it's fascinating. This also has like mixtures of current day technology, but with like miracles of gods plus like just its own fantasy setting. So it's kind of this mashup of a lot of different things that make the like environment that we're in super cool and unlike anything I've come across. I'm so excited to continue to read this book through the month of July and definitely pick up books 2 and 3 probably very quickly after. But yes, this is so cool and I'm so happy I picked it up this month. Alrighty guys, those are all of the books I read this June. Let me know down below some books you've read recently, as I would love to know, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!